You ought to be in pictures. You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures.
Hello and welcome to Deep Dive Movie Reviews with my friend Steve Hackman and myself, James Marsh. This week we are talking Downton Abbey, a new era.
You know, James, I can't wait to talk Downton Abbey, but before we do, if you haven't already subscribed to Deep Dive Movie Reviews, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, ding the bell so you never ever miss a video. And while you're there, just go ahead and like it, share it. Oh, and by the way, Deep Dive Movie Reviews does contain spoilers, so you have been warned. James?
Okay, so Downton Abbey, a new era. It's 1928. And Violet, played by Maggie Smith, just reveals that she has been left a French villa in the will of a marquis who has now died, though she has known for many years ago. And so she's going to put it in her will to young Sibby, but it means that Grantham and some of the other Downton residents are going to head down there and check it out because the widow who is living in the estate is somewhat reluctant to hand it over. Meanwhile, while they are out of town, the household are approached by a film crew headed up by Hugh Dancy's Jack Barber, and they want to shoot a silent movie within the grounds. And Lady Mary, played by Michelle Dockery, is going to oversee all of this. And then we quickly discover what it's like working on a silent movie, and problems hit that production almost immediately. But it throws the house's staff into a tiz because they are far more tuned in to the world of the movies than their employers, and stars are going to be in their house. So, Steve, I have a confession to make. If it wasn't entirely clear from what I was just saying, I don't know Downton Abbey as a franchise at all. I haven't seen any of the TV show. I didn't even watch the first movie because I figured I hadn't watched any of the TV show, so why should I watch that? But then when this one came around, I was just like, you know what? It's called a new era. Maybe it's going to be somewhat accessible to a casual viewer. So I took the plunge and I watched it. But this is very much me jumping in your pool.
This is definitely my pool, James. I knew it from the minute you started this by saying Violet inherited. I'm thinking you just called Maggie Smith's Dowager Crawley Violet.
I was like, isn't that her name? Did I get it wrong?
Okay. Clutch the pearls. No, I'm a huge Downton Abbey fan. Along with my wife, we've watched all the series. We watched the first movie in 2019. I couldn't wait to get and see Downton Abbey, a new era. Tammy and I went and just enjoyed this immensely. I'm going to come right out of the gate. There's going to be no surprises here. I just want to rave about how much I enjoyed this film. Julian Fellowes, who brought us Downton Abbey, who's the writer and creator of Downton Abbey, he understands what fans want in Downton Abbey, and he delivers in this movie. What I love about Downton Abbey is there's never any huge high stakes. This is all gentry politics. You know, it's the equivalent of at the county fair that maybe the Lady Crawley may have an undue bias with the election officials because of her, and this is the biggest scandal that could happen. This is the type of things that happen in Downton Abbey. You know, the occasional little malfeasance between what goes on upstairs or downstairs. But for an American, this is mac and cheese. North England, people drinking
tea and scones, surely.
Tea and scones in the drawing room, tweed, big manners. I love it. I can't get enough of it. And I just want to say again, Julian Fellowes delivers in this film. He gives the fans exactly what they want to see without any swings or roundabouts. He knows what they want and he brings it to them.
Yeah, I mean, in my understanding, I knew this was Julian Fellowes. My understanding is that basically this kind of came out of Gosford Park. Basically, Julian Fellowes wrote the screenplay for Gosford Park, the Robert Altman film, and won an Oscar for his screenplay. And that was all about, the upstairs, downstairs intrigue of a big sort of stately home. And I believe that that's where the kernel of the idea for Downton Abbey came from. Now, this is where we really can lean into our I'm English and you're American, because I think nobody foresaw that this was going to be anything like as big as it was when it came out. And I think that it's fair to say that the only reason why it got as big as it did is because it was a hit in America. It played on PBS, I think.
Yes, a PBS.
Yeah. So it's an ITV drama, which is already a little bit kind of weird. One would expect that this would be a BBC production.
Yeah, BBC.
And I was quite surprised when I discovered it wasn't. I was like, ITV, the commercial station, oh dear. But that's the case. And when this first came out, it was just another, post-Edwardian period drama series, and I did grow up in England, and they're on TV all the time. Whether it's House of Eliot or Poirot or Miss Marple or Brideshead Revisited or whatever it is, there's always like half a dozen of them on TV. And for the most part, they're done pretty well, because this is what we do. It's like the Merchant Ivory movies of the 80s and 90s, Howard Zinn, Remains of the Day, Room with a View. That was British cinema until something like Trainspotting came along and shook it all up. And it's what we do. We do it really well. We're only one or two generations away from when it was a big deal. The class system is still very much part of British identity and British culture. And this was when this is that class system at its most sort of it's like a microcosm of the entire nation and the entire community. It's why people love The Crown so much. Yeah, because it's that peek behind the curtain, and very highly fictionalized recounting of real events. And so I knew what I was getting into, but it was also the reason why I had never gone near it, was just because it's just another one of them. And then it got too big, and it was almost like, I can't start now. It's already like 5 seasons in or whatever. Right. And I was like, I still don't think it's anything I haven't seen before. But this one came along and I thought, well, let's jump in. It's called A New Era. And you've got Hugh Dancy as a new character coming in. You've got Laura Haddock as the silent film star who is faced with the very intimidating prospect of, we've now got to turn this movie into a sound movie. And she's got a voice like a fishmonger's wife.
Yes. For our audiences that are not familiar with the vocabulary of a local Englishman, what would that be?
Well, she's from London, isn't she? And she's from the East End of London, probably. So she probably talks a little bit like this, maybe even from Essex or something. So anyway, she has a common accent that does not fit with her screen identity, with her on-screen image, and that's a problem. And so I thought it was. So you're like, oh wow, suddenly we're in territory like Singing in the Rain. Or The Artist, and suddenly this movie is going to be all about the transition between silent movies to the talkies. And I was like, oh, this is great, because this is obviously nothing to do with Downton Abbey, but at the same time, I thought it was fascinating because it throws a spanner into the works of the hierarchy within the house, because obviously, the staff all know the Granthams incredibly well. They know their place, and it's a very carefully, meticulously orchestrated hierarchy, both between upstairs and downstairs and within upstairs and downstairs. I get that. But then you get this busload of a film cast and crew come in, and within their own microcosm, there's a hierarchy. You've got the director, you've got the stars who are obviously like royalty, if you like. And then you've got all the sparkies and what have you. You've got the crew. And so within their production, there's a hierarchy. Then they come into the house, and all of a sudden, the Grantham family is usurped by film stars who are the new royalty. They are the celebrities. They are more important, certainly in the eyes of their own employees. And so it completely turns it upside down, because the Granthams in particular, they've got no idea who these people are. I thought there was a great running joke in it that Hugh Bonneville's character doesn't even know what to call a film, and he calls it like a kinematograph or all kinds of nonsense. And they must have had great fun writing that dialogue for him, because it's just nonsensical what's coming out of his head, but you completely get it.
Right. I was thinking of all the fun that they were having with the idea that there's actually a family that lives in the manor that they use for Downton Abbey.
This is what I was about to say. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Or is that they're essentially dramatizing what must happen at the stately home that they use for Downton every season, where the crew of Downton descend upon it, and it's very much like, you can go in that room, you can't go in that room, you can touch this, you can't touch this, and they actually put that in the movie. Essentially,
I leaned over to Tammy when we were watching it, and I said that to her. I said, they're really mirroring. They're having a little fun with what they've had to deal with for the last 6 seasons of Downton Abbey, where they were coming into somebody's big manor home and filming this very popular show, while they're probably, the family at large is getting paid, but are thinking, I wish these actors would get out of my house.
Sure. And I think it was an opportunity for the Downton production to poke a little bit of fun at their hosts, if you like, because so are they called the Granthams or the Crawleys? What do I refer to them as?
The family is Crawley, the family, but and you'll understand landed gentry and nobility more. Apparently he assumed once he became the Lord, he became Lord Grantham, even though his family name is Crawley.
Okay, so I guess we should call him Grantham then. Yeah, he's the 7th Earl of Grantham. Yeah. Right. Okay, so they're having poking a little bit of lighthearted fun at their hosts, because Grantham, is really reluctant for any of this stuff. They're like, "What? No, we don't want them invading. We don't want them coming in and touching all our stuff, and it's a real invasion of privacy and all the rest of it." It's like, yeah, but we need the money. And this is such a real, genuine problem for these landed gentry, for these aristocratic families, because they don't work. They only have just their own money that they get from their own land, but they have these huge, old, ancient, breezy homes that they've got to maintain, which are incredibly expensive to maintain. And so the way you maintain them is you do like what the family that live at Downton do, is you open them up either to the public or to film crews as sets and what have you. And so that's where Grantham, very quickly comes around to the idea, well, we've got a leaky roof, which is always the reason. It's always a leaky roof.
Yeah.
Or it's like, oh, we have to retile the West Wing finally, or this kind of stuff. So I think it's a nice playful pop at their hosts. And I can only hope and assume that it was taken as good-naturedly as it feels like it was intended.
One of the things I enjoyed about the film is each of these characters, particularly the ones who are members of the family who have been there since season 1, they come into these roles just so naturally. They have been imbibing these roles for so many years. It's fun to watch them just effortlessly put on that attire. Watching Hugh Bonneville come, although he lost a few pounds, and now my wife is saying, I've got to lose. Like, if Hugh Bonneville can lose a few pounds, you at his age, you can too. So I got that pressure on me. But and to show you what big of fans Tammy and I are, a few years ago in Hong Kong, Hugh Bonneville came through town here and did an evening with Hugh Bonneville, and we got front row. In fact, I will insert a picture. If I can find the picture, it will come in now. If I don't, it means I couldn't find the picture.
I want to know what percentage of that crowd was American.
Probably a fair bit. A fair bit. But, I also want to add, just bring it back to the cast. Michelle Dockery, who plays Lady Mary, who's the eldest daughter. I have enjoyed watching the evolution of this character from the beginning in the first season, where she the first season, I think in the first couple episodes, she sleeps with a Turkish attaché who sneaks into her room and dies while they're having sex. And then they have to, there's all this about how they're going to the scandal, and they're going to have to move the body into his room. So it looked like he died of a heart attack in his room and wasn't in Lady Mary's room. And she makes these kind of immature decisions. And the first couple seasons, she is trying to find herself. And to watch her, 12, 15 years later, at least in story time, where she's assumed almost the Maggie Smith role. It's inferred that as Maggie Smith passes, she will become, even though her dad's still alive, she will become the one who runs this realm. And watching her evolve into that maturity to the point where her husband, there's kind of a plot point in this movie where the husband is away. We never see her husband in this film. I don't know if the actor couldn't sign. I don't know what the issue was there, but he's away, and it's having a toll on their marriage. And of course, Hugh Dancy, the director, becomes quite fond of Mary. They have a working relationship, which leads to him making a pass at her. What's beautiful is, one, she doesn't act offended. Oh, the scandal. Nor does she give into it. Like the Mary from the first season would have given into it. But she just so deftly, hey, I'm flattered. To have two handsome men fighting over me sounds wonderful, but it ain't going to happen. And I just loved watching that kind of evolution. She knows who she is now, as opposed to the character we saw years ago.
Yeah, because I think she gets to return the compliment very, very classily when she says, I'm so flattered to have a man so handsome.
Yes.
Fighting over me like this, to be interested in. Yeah, no, she's all class. Absolutely. Yeah. So no, that's great that to hear that she wasn't always that way. And
no, not at all.
She has come a long way. And what I did appreciate about this, and it does go some way to show how well written it is and how confident everybody is in their roles, is that you knew, and I mean, things are happening on the periphery with these supporting characters that you're not quite sure what the backstory is there, but it doesn't matter. The central narrative is so strong, and there are all these nice little, nicely observed character moments like that, where you get an understanding that you're watching something that's part of something bigger, but they're letting you in. You are not being kept at arm's length. There aren't sort of nods and winks necessarily, that are exclusionary.
No, you make a good point, James, because I know you're coming into this as a Downton
completely
you're a Downton virgin. And
if that's what they're called, then yeah.
And my brother recently messaged me and said, when I was messaging that or putting on social media that I was going to see the film, he said, I've never seen an episode. Would I still enjoy it? And I said, well, my friend James, who I do the movie reviews, saw it, and he enjoyed it despite not having any of the backstory. And that's what I thought that this film did well, is, like I said, Julian Fellowes really gave us a script and a film that hit the sweet spot for long-term fans, but he made it accessible enough for people who are just coming into this for the first time. They could follow the story, but for those that know all the backstory, there's these little nuggets, there's these little feelings of hitting all the right spots, just like with Tom at the beginning with the wedding between Tom and Lucy. I mean, the reason he's part of the family was he was the chauffeur in season 1. He falls in love with the middle daughter. It lasts like 2 or 3 seasons. They have all the drama of the chauffeur loves the Nobel's daughter.
Well, the fact that he's Irish, right?
They played on that too.
That's a big deal.
They had a whole issue on that. It was fun to watch. He finally gets accepted in the family. They have the baby. The mom dies, but he's still a member of the family through marriage and through the daughter. And then to see him kind of come into happiness with a new wife that's accepted by the family. His position in the family is still there. They love Tom. And for those of us who have been following this story for years and years, it was just a real feeling of trying to think. I don't want to use the term mac and cheese again. Comfort food, to get that comfort food feeling of the cherry on the top of that plot line cake.
Yeah, but I think they were quite smart about it, because there are a couple of moments in it which are obviously integral to the larger story. And so people who have been watching for this long and were perhaps contemplating, do I really need to go see these films? Because my understanding is the TV show's done, right?
Yes.
And these are the films are both sort of sequels as opposed to spin-offs. But there are moments in this film which are clearly, important. The wedding at the beginning is nice, and I'm sure people would want to see that, but also the end. That is a big deal. If I knew anything about Downton Abbey going in, it's that Maggie Smith's character is an absolute battle axe who has, just a cutting comment for every situation and takes no shit from anybody. That's what I knew, just because that has seeped into the zeitgeist. That's what Downton is.
I need to go online and find all the zingers of Maggie Smith throughout this show, because you live for whatever biting arrow she is going to throw out at somebody. And she does it in such a way that her comment will go over the shoulder, whoever she is attacking, spin around and hit them right in the back. It's beautiful.
And I did appreciate how many jokes there were at the expense of the French, because
yes.
gotta love that. I am English at the end of the day. Because if we're going to talk about plot just for a second, one of the key plot points is why was the Dowager Countess given this house, and is it because she had a tryst with this Marquis all the way back then? And they work out that it must have been right around the time that she got pregnant with Robert Crawley.
Yes.
And so it dawns on him midway through, and he's like, oh my God, am I the bastard son of a Frenchman?
Which is,
and
to him,
it's obviously, blows his mind completely. And then I think is it his wife who says to him, I can't remember, it's like, no, I think it's one of the English guys, because his wife's American.
Yeah, his wife's
So
American.
I think it's one of the English guys goes, well, of course we had no doubt in our mind. We knew you weren't French. You don't even like garlic. And that was just like, okay,
so
yeah. I'm in safe hands. This is good stuff.
No, it was good. And with that moment when Hugh Bonneville breaks down, when Lady Crawley tells her that she might be dying of cancer, it was just a powerful moment of him. His whole world is collapsing, and in a span of just a couple hours, he finds out that he may be the bastard son of a French marquis. He's going to lose his family name, and he's going to lose his wife. And he just implodes right there. And Downton Abbey being Downton Abbey, of course, none of those things actually happen. Sure. He's still the Earl of Grantham. It turns out she doesn't have cancer. It's just some little something that's treatable,
anemia or something.
Something something that it looks like cancer, but it's treatable. And we're all going to continue on to another movie, I have no doubt.
So am I right to assume, I mean, it seems fairly obvious, but am I right to assume the whole fact that he's married an American woman was a big thing when it happened?
Yeah, it was. He needed money. The family needed money. She comes from a very rich American entrepreneurial family. It was that thing
new
that
money.
You heard
money.
Yes, you heard about, which even was highlighted in Titanic, where you have this old money that needs new money. And so their marriages, the American gets a title, the Lord gets the money, and everyone's happy. And that's why they even kind of allude to that at the beginning of their marriage, he needed the money, but the love grew.
Yes, they do have that conversation. I was just wondering whether that whole element of the story was part of the show, or whether that had already happened.
It was always a minor issue, but they never made that a major plot point. It was just kind of always underlying the surface in a few seasons, but it was never an issue in any of the 6 years that I mean,
no doubt that led to The Gilded Age, which is Julian Fellowes' new show on HBO, which I did watch the first episode of just for work purposes. Have you watched any of that?
I haven't. No, I have to check that out.
So that's a very recent thing that just launched a few months ago on HBO, again by Julian Fellowes, and it's New York post First World War, I think. And so that's very much the old money, new money thing on the, in these big houses going up around the edge of Central Park and what have you. And it's all very snobby, but in an American way. But so I imagine that it's all that kind of one. I don't wonder whether he's going to try and tie it in to there's going to be any crossover.
Well, he definitely knows that Americans, although we talk egalitarianism and we talk about this, deep down, we love lords and ladies, princes and princesses, and especially if it's a benevolent one. If it is a Lord Grantham who is a benevolent master of his domain, who genuinely cares for the people under his umbrella, Americans will buy that up left and right.
You're getting choked up just thinking about it.
I told you, I was 14 years old, 14, when we got up at about 4:30 a.m. to watch Charles and Diana's wedding as a family, because by golly, we're going to watch.
I think we have a mug at home. from that one. So for me, the big draw this time out, it was Hugh Dancy and Dominic West. I was like, okay, these were, I knew were the new characters, and they're both actors that I really like from their TV work on Hannibal and The Wire, respectively. Both British guys who have done well in America, and I thought that was a good little inside joke at Dominic West's, not at his expense, but celebrating his career in a way that he was a Brit who had gone to Hollywood and was kind of masquerading as an American leading man. And he was talking about, we call it the Hollywood Raj, and there's a whole bunch of like British actors over in Hollywood who play cricket every weekend and all the rest of it. And that was what he did. I remember on The Wire, it was him and Idris Elba were two of like the biggest characters in that show. And it was their big break for both of them. And only after the fact did anybody find out, even the Brits find out, oh, they're both English. Yeah. Oh, cool. Okay. And it's something that we do well, is go over and pretend to be Americans.
The show, I've never watched The Wire. I have to watch that sometime.
Oh, you must. It's like, it's a tough show, but it's one of the best. So that was great. I mean, it's always good to see Dominic West doing anything. And he was obviously having a lot of fun with it. And then, it seems like he gave Tom, was it? Just a nice little sort of ribbon on the cherry on the cake of his plot line, gave him a little nice out, as it were.
Tom Barrow has been a complicated character since season 1. I mean, obviously he's a closeted homosexual, which in the early 1900s was a major issue. And that has been an ongoing plot point throughout the show. But in addition to that, he was always a very complicated character in that he was not always a nice guy. He could be scheming, he could be insecure, he could be cunning. There are good people in the servants class. He was not one of them. But every time he got kind of sidelined, okay, he's one of the bad guys, he would grow a moral compass. We would see a level of depth and complexity in him that we hadn't seen, realizing a lot of the way he interacts with the world is response to the inner turmoil he has. And so Tom has been a real beloved character that has grown in that show. When I thought he would have kind of like, there was a rotation of characters the first 3, 4, 5 years, people exiting downstairs. I would have thought he would have been one of them. And no, he has been somebody who's been there since day one. And it's interesting as his homosexuality has been dealt with at times. It's funny how things are always, people around are always much more progressive than the actual situation would have called for from the time. He's always get pulled to the side and think, Tom, now, I wouldn't judge you. You people should be free to love who they want to love. And I want to almost say, and there's our public service announcement from Downton Abbey, which I totally agree with, but I always find it interesting because I don't think you would actually get as much understanding as Tom has gotten over the years from his surrounding folk, but it's worked out. And I love that he now has almost got a nice clean ending. He kind of acknowledges in the year that they're living, he's not going to find the man of his dreams and live happily ever after married. In 1928, this just didn't happen. Or 20, what's the year?
Yeah, 28. Yeah,
1928. This just didn't happen. But he got the best that he could. Dominic West, they can both wink at each other. They both know the relationship they want to have, and they're riding off into the sunset together. It's great.
Yes, he invites him to be his gentleman.
Yeah.
Come and keep his house and be his traveling partner, it's a nice moment. He goes and are you asking me what I think you're asking me? It's like, if you want it to be,
Yeah.
It's nicely handled.
There's one of my favorite Frasier episodes. I don't know if you ever watched Frasier with Kelsey Grammer, but there's a great episode about season 10 of Frasier, and my wife and I always watch it because it is so funny. Where Patrick Stewart, Sir Patrick Stewart, plays a producer of, I think, film and stage, but he's very huge, and he just ends up having to meet Kelsey Grammer's Frasier. Long story short is Frasier's enamored with him because of his position. Patrick Stewart is convinced he's gay and basically offers him the same deal that Dominic West offers Tom Barrow. Basically, let's fly off to the Italian Riviera. I'm going to be shooting this film, and you could do this for me, and we could do it, and we can bathe, and everybody's saying, Frasier, he's gay. He's asking you to be his lover. No, of course not. We're just friends. And when it finally dawns on him, he starts to think, gosh, I want all of this, but I'm not gay. And he's like, oh, do I do it? And it just made me think while I was watching this with Tom of that episode of Frasier, because it was genuinely funny.
So before we wrap this up,
yeah,
I think we need to talk about the impact that it is going to have, the inevitability that Dowager Countess Violet Crawley is no more.
I think we all knew she was at her end, and probably the producers thinking, we don't know how much longer Maggie Smith is going to be with us. So it'd be better to do this the proper way than to say in a future movie, oh, it's too bad she passed away last year.
Yes. What a cold snap we had last Christmas.
Yeah.
Poor Granny.
Yeah. So they really did it. I don't know how you felt about that final scene, but she went out with some classic zingers. It was emotional. It was heartfelt. And that moment where, will you stop? I think one of the servants starts crying. Will you stop that racket? I can't even hear myself dying.
And those are her
final. Was that her final
words?
Yeah,
those were her last words. She'd been sort of talking to all of her nearest and dearest around her, and then she tells off her maid or whomever it is and croaks. That's it.
Yeah,
which seemed appropriate. That made sense. From the beginning, it felt somewhat inevitable that that's what they were going to do with it. She's so ancient, and she never left her bedroom. Even you're kind of like, oh, okay, she's not coming out of this alive. It does make sense. You're absolutely right. It's like, let's take control of this inevitability and write it the way we want to write it, and give her the send off that she deserves. And I thought it was quite sweetly done.
Yes.
I'm not entirely sure of all the baggage and history that she has with all the people in that room, but like, for example, it doesn't matter, but all the characters played by Penelope Wilton and Imelda Staunton and people like that, it was kind of like unclear exactly how they fit into the puzzle, but it didn't matter. You kind of got it. They were either relatives or friends of relatives, or widows of relatives or whomever.
Yeah, James, the interaction with Penelope Wilton was wonderful, because they'd had this love-hate relationship for 6 seasons of Downton Abbey, the films. They respected each other. They despised one another. They butted heads often. So I love that moment where they just admitted how much they really cared for each other. And Maggie Smith says, we've had our differences and we've butted heads, but I'm dying. And it's like this, you could see they genuinely loved one another. And when she says, I think she says something like, you're one of the few people whose opinion mattered to me, or whose opinion I listened to. Right. Something like that. It just spoke volumes for those of us who have watched this show from the beginning and watched the evolution of this relationship between two extremely strong women. Well, James, just drawing this to a close, what are we going to use as our instrument for measuring our review of Downton Abbey?
Ooh, this is tricky. What do I consider relevant? Well, I can think of villas in the south of France, but there might be something a little bit more manageable than that. I don't know. You're the Downton expert. What
our measurement tool is going to be how many villas in the south of France out of 5. And I'm going to give Downton Abbey a new era, 4 villas on the south of France. It is a wonderful film. I'm even going to say, I'm going to have to caveat this. If you're a Downton Abbey fan, I would give this a 4.5 or a 5. This is a must see that hits all of the sweet spots. It is comfort food. I loved it as a Downton Abbey fan. As just a film critic, looking at it without all of my inherent American biases for something that is so wonderful for us, I have to probably give it a 4. And that, obviously, this is not a perfect film. There are some minor shortcomings here or there. The plot is it keeps moving along, but it's simple, it's straightforward. I would be reluctant to give it a 5 just as a movie critic, but as a Downton Abbey lover, I'd say go see it. And if you're watching this, go see it again. It's great.
Yeah. So okay. So as a Downton newbie, with no prior understanding, I was pleasantly surprised how welcomed I felt. How welcome I felt. It was enjoyable. It was entertaining. It was light. It was frothy. It tapped into subjects, like the film industry in the 1920s, which I just responded to immediately. There's obviously a lot more going on than that I didn't pick up on, but I never felt isolated at any point. I never felt excluded from anything, and it was just a fine old time. And so I'm going to give it a rock solid 3 mansions, villas, inherited villas on the south of France.
From just knowing you, James, that is high praise indeed. But for listeners out there, a 3 on Downton Abbey from James is like a 4 from me. So we're good.
We're on the same page. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. And I just want to also add that the supporting cast was so great. Mosley becoming a script writer at the end.
Yeah,
there are elements. We could go on with some of the other side plots and cast members, but I just thought of Mosley, wanted to bring him up. Hey, drawing this to a close, if you haven't subscribed to Deep Dive Movie Reviews, that'd be fantastic if you went ahead and did that. Also, if you want to follow James and I on social media, we're both on Twitter and on Instagram, and you'll find details on how to reach us below, as well as the audio versions of this episode you will find in the description box below. James?
So let us know what you thought about Downton Abbey, a new era. Are you a fan of the show? Are you reluctant to watch this because you're not a fan of the show? Are you reluctant to watch this even though you are a fan of the show? Are you thinking it's perfect and I wish you'd leave it alone? You let us know. While you're there, check out some of the other videos. We've got more than 50 videos on our page now. New movies, old movies, our Every Best Picture series. So please take a look, leave some comments, like, subscribe, ding the bell, and we would love to hear from you.
Till next episode.
We're dying now. You need to do that again. I was talking.
Till next episode.
Bye-bye.
You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit you would be.